Hola, kitchen fighting connoisseurs. This is Kid Nate of BloodyElbow.com, joined once again by Zane Simon, and you're looking at two effing idiots who gets up at 6 a.m. to watch a bunch of crappy fights from the middle of nowhere. Us. This is it. So, Zane, make me feel better about this.
It wasn't like I had fun. The undercard, which I expected to suck, was fun, and the
It
main
really
card,
was. And the main card just.
yeah, the main card was less exciting. I think that was kind of one of those weird reverse things where you expect the main card to be great, and it was pretty boring, and you expect the undercard to suck, and it was actually pretty good.
It
So
was pretty good, but the main card had Magny versus Lim, which was a great fight,
that was
which
such a
had
great
me
fight.
roaring on the edge of my seat. But that was pretty much the peak. And Mark Munoz's retirement speech, which was very touching,
And
gave
just him winning in general in front of that crowd was pretty good. Like the fight may not have been awesome, but just watching
it
him,
wasn't even really good, but it was cool to see him win.
yeah.
And especially in a fight we gave him no chance to win. But in retrospect, somebody said Luke Barnett would be doing a Dominic Cruz impression, and he does a really bad Dominic Cruz impression, and so Munoz won and gave a great speech and reminded us all the best side of the sport, which is honor and glory and winning when you're not supposed to, and perseverance and self-respect and accomplishment and everything else. But the main event, Frankie Edgar versus Uriah Faber, I'm not really disappointed because I didn't expect a lot. But Frankie Edgar outpointing Uriah Faber for 5 rounds at a slow simmer. Just anything to add?
It was it was an okay fight, but it basically just went like exactly the way I thought it would. And I thought it might be Frankie Edgar just taking him down over and over and roughing him up for 5 rounds in like a Cub Swanson way. But this works too. I mean, one way or another, it was just going to be Frankie Edgar clearly having an extra gear on Uriah Faber.
Yeah, he had the footwork and the speed. When they did go to the ground, Faber threatened what, once with an attempted guillotine choke? I mean,
Not much.
yeah, but Edgar couldn't keep him down either. And towards the end, he wasn't even really trying to get him down. And I don't know. It frustrates me. This is my beef with point fighting because Edgar did everything he needed to do to clearly win, and yet there was no conclusion. If this was a fight, it would be an unsettled matter. If it was a war, you'd have a treaty where nobody conceded anything. I mean, it's just it's frustrating as a lover of mayhem, but Frankie Edgar clearly better guy, and that's it. That's all we have to say about the main event. So let's and then Gegard Mousasi totally dominated Costa Philippou with takedowns and
Yeah.
grappling.
That wasn't even a close fight, and I'm actually pretty happy to see Mousasi actually, just fight the smart fight and be like, "Wow, this guy's only chance to beat me is a one-punch KO. I might as well just take that away and rough him up, and if he can't do anything about it, that's on him."
Yep, fair enough. I mean, Mousasi did what he had to do. Philippou, I mean, Mousasi's the guy going places. He's a contender. Philippou's basically been stalled out. So it is what it is. The same thing. Edgar's a contender in the making and the wanting. He wants a title shot. I don't know that this is going to have fans clamoring for a title shot, but it keeps him alive, keeps him up there. He's certainly going to be high on the list for Jose Aldo or Conor McGregor, whoever wins the big title fight at UFC 189 in July.
Yeah.
So, good for Frankie and good for the fans of Manila who seem to have a heck of a time. But let's talk about the fight that really kicked ass. Neil Magny and Ace Lim. There for a minute, I thought Ace Lim had him. I mean, he had him hurt.
He did. Magny started that fight really dumb, which was, he's had a little bit of a habit of this, but I think he tried to use it a little, and Lim made him pay immediately, which is that he's willing to back up and just try and go for a high guard and eat a couple shots before he slips away, see if he can like land a counter. He doesn't use his footwork to the maximum effect to just get out and stay out. Which, in some ways it's nice, but when you're facing a guy like Lim, who's just so much power, so much raw physicality, the moment he tried to cover up, Lim just bombed on him.
Yeah, you don't want to get cute with Ace Lim. But then Ace Lim totally blew it by just winging it and winging it and winging it and shot his wad, completely gassed himself in that blitz. And from that point on, it was all Neil Magny. And I think you made an excellent point on the vivisection. It was either you or Connor that said Magny's confidence was going to be key, that he's had this winning streak, he's been through some tough fights, and once upon a time, Neil Magny would have folded under adversity. And this is a fighter, I mean, coming out of that fight with a win, especially, I'd be amazed if he remembers most of that fight from the head trauma he took early on. But knowing that you can take that kind of beating and still win, and win dominantly, that is a huge boost of confidence as he heads into the upper tier of the UFC welterweight division. So Neil Magny's for real. We got to admit it.
Yeah, no, I mean I've been liking him for a while, and he looks like he's started to finally add the tools, especially with his top control ground and pound, some of that stuff, to make him actually a dangerous contender in the top 15, and not just like I've had him kind of pegged as the Michael Bisping fighter, the guy who could be a top 5 and like never quite make it past that because he never has quite the extra gear. That may still be the truth, but he looks a lot better. Like, he's finishing guys, and that's what you got to do when you're in those situations.
Yeah, you have to be able to at the very highest levels, you only get brief windows of advantage. You have to be able to seize it, and a guy who can seize it and finish the fight in seconds has such an edge over a guy who has to dominate, especially over 5 rounds, which is where you get in the upper ranges. So, Magny came into this fight at number 15. He's got to shoot up a spot or two. But looking at the guys ahead of him, I mean, Gunnar Nelson, Ryan LaFleur, he wants Rick Story. That's an excellent target for him to aim at, but I'd have him above Kelvin Gastelum. I'd have him above Nelson. He's above Story even, or young Stun Gun Kim. I mean, this to me is a guy who should be in the top 10 already.
Yeah, and I mean, Gastelum's not even in the division, and yeah, a lot of those other guys, they haven't proven much either. A lot of them have been dropping fights, ugly losses, have the same kind of wins and less of them than Magny does. So I don't necessarily think that there's any reason that Magny shouldn't be shooting up the rankings. But there's a good reason that they don't tie pay to rankings. It's because the people in charge of it are terrible at it.
That is clearly the case. I mean, anyway, the UFC rankings. What are you going to do? But let's run through the rest of the preliminary card. The 2 fights on Fight Pass, probably the weakest of the undercard. Flyweight Yao Jikai and Nolan Tickman, an extremely tedious fight. I had to live blog and have post-traumatic stress, blocked it all out completely. I remember Tickman circling away and Zukui completely unable to cut off the cage. There must not be a Chinese word for cut off the cage.
Yeah, maybe not. It was a bad decision. Tickman won the fight, but it's an ugly fight, and Tickman fought an ugly fight. He fought a fight that you're going to lose as often as not. So
yeah, and no sympathy. Who wants to watch that? Like, I don't care if he did outpoint the guy. He's on his bicycle backing away the entire time. That is not a sustainable vision for the sport. That is not what people pay money to watch. That's not what I want to watch. So, too bad, Nolan Tickman. That was a long flight to take a loss. In the next fight, John De Los Reyes defeated Roldan Sengchayan in a little humdinger of a 2-round fight. Submission in the second round, but there was some back and forth and some nice scrambles and a gory cut.
Yeah, no, that was a great fight, and it was the fight I was hoping to see, which is that De Los Reyes is limited, but he's got a lot of power in his hands, and that's like the only thing he has is he's got power in his hands, but that makes for a fun fighter. And Songchayan just, he's a action kickboxer without the physicality to really compete long term in the UFC, but it made for a great fight. So I was happy to see Reyes win, and it was a good fight.
It was a fun fight, and if you've got some time to kill on Fight Pass, it's one I would maybe check out. And then on the 4-card Fox Sports 1 prelims, Ning Guangyao defeated Royston Wee with a second-round TKO. Pretty satisfying performance, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, Wee just looked terrible. Like, he had no striking, literally, whatsoever. At some point, I was just like, there's no reason that Guanyu shouldn't just be running himself into Wee and throwing constantly, because Wee could not answer one strike. So, and he did eventually and knocked him out. So
yeah, he poured it on. He's the thing that was frustrating from Anna, because usually a commentator, but Anik and Brian Stan were both going, Guangyao just stalled out in the middle of the second round. I don't know what happened. He just got kicked in the balls, guys. Like, that's what happened. You take a nut shot like that, and it sucks the wind out of your sails. But he saved enough to pour it on right at the end of the second round, won by TKO at 4 minutes 59 seconds. So, good performance from a Chinese fighter that I'm actually interested to see again. So that's something. And also, welterweight Li Jingliang knocked out Diego Lima, another Chinese fighter. I'm excited to see about the Leech. not much you can complain about with his performance.
No, he's actually improving a lot fight to fight. He's a guy that's really like he came into the UFC and he was known as a clingy backpack grappler. I mean, that's why he has the nickname the Leech, is because he would just drag you down, cling on to you, and just suck all the energy out of a fight. And he's realized he doesn't have the wrestling to do that in the UFC, so he's become a really aggressive striker, and that's fun. I mean, he
And he's
beat the
got some
piss.
power.
Yeah, he's got some power. Well, and Diego Lima, somebody needs to tell that kid to hang up his gloves. Like, I'm not one to tell people to retire, but when you're getting knocked out by a Chinese grappler, like,
Yeah. Somebody who cares about him needs to tell him, kid, it's time to hang him up. But good performance by the Leech, not so good by Lima. And that brings us to lightweight Cajun Johnson versus Zhang Luping. Not a terrible fight. It was the first of a string of decisions, though, that would dog the rest of the card. But at the time, I enjoyed it perfectly well.
yeah, it was a good back and forth fight. Johnson fought all right, and he showed that, he sort of learned the lesson that Lima hasn't, which is that if you're going to be a physically fragile fighter, you have to fight a smart fight.
Make up for it with movement and volume and disruption. Whenever Luping got into a groove, Johnson did something to bust it up. He went for a takedown or he threw a combination he wasn't expecting. So decent fight, nothing to write home about. And then lightweight, John Tuck submitted Tai Young Bang in really a slobber knocker of a fight, a fun little scrap.
That was a great fight. I've been kind of critical of Tuck for being kind of an undersized lightweight, but I know that Stan talked about it looked like he was bigger out there in this fight. He'd put on some muscle. And he almost got the knockout, ended with the submission, and looked really good. I mean, it looks like he's got the technical skill that if he can get the physicality to match, he could be a good action fighter. He could be that kind of, like Njokuani-esque upper tier action fighter.
Yeah, somebody that's fun to watch, somebody you look forward to seeing. And then that brings us to the 6-fight main card. Opened up with a disappointment because you had me all excited about Levan Makashvili versus Mark Edeva, and it just was a stylistic mismatch. I mean, it didn't add up to anything because you had a guy with a really funky kickboxing style and Edeva against a guy with really good wrestling, and that's all I needed to do was get a few takedowns. And
yeah, I mean, the thing with prospects is that we're not calling them great fighters for a reason. We're calling them prospects for a reason, and Makashvili's game is in development. Like you can see all the basics. He's got a great wrestling game. He's got decent enough striking control. It's just not all there yet, and I think it'll come along. But this was just a get the win, get the cage time, get the rounds kind of performance for him.
Yeah, he did what he had to do. And Edeva, in his defense, there wasn't a lot he could do if he starts playing his game, which is a lot of low percentage kicks against a wrestler like Makashvili. He's going to get taken down, and once he was down, there was nothing he could do. But I'm looking forward to seeing both these guys again. So that brings us to featherweight Philippe Nover versus Yu Chul Nam, a split decision win for Nover. Anything to say about the fight?
It was just a complete bullshit decision. I mean, there's no way Nover won that fight. But
well, two of the judges thought he did. Of course, one of the judges also had the other fight for Edeva. So
yeah, there was some serious hometown judging there. That was one of those things where, like, Nover started out great, and then he faded, and Nam had all the meaningful offense in the second round and third round. And there was I didn't see any way that Nover should have won it. But at the same time, not like Nam put on a great fight. He should have won it, but it doesn't make me more excited about either of these guys. Most particularly, I still have no belief that Nover's going to win fights at a UFC level whatsoever.
Not based on this performance. And so we talked about Magny and Lim. We talked about Munoz Barnett. Anything to add about Munoz Barnett?
Man, it seems like Barnett's just slowly being turned into the most mediocre welterweight.
Yeah. He needs to change camps, I think. And he's a middleweight, not a welterweight.
Middleweight, yeah. The most mediocre middleweight. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think the alliance is a fit for him at all. This is a guy with that length that could be killing people with knees in the clinch, and just,
Alliance is a camp that, like, I've come to the conclusion that I really would much rather see people go there when they've already developed at a small camp and they've already like had a bunch of individual one-on-one training. Then you go to Alliance and they teach you how to integrate and game plan and weight cut and do all those other big professional things that they do really well. But I don't want to see somebody that's really raw go there and try to develop a skill set, because it just doesn't seem like the fighters that do that turn out well.
No, they don't seem to be letting him develop a style that works for him. They're trying to force him into the Alliance style. It was no fun to watch. So we talked about Mousasi Philippou, nothing to add there. And we talked about Edgar Faber, definitely nothing to add there. So that's our show. Any final thoughts on the card, Zane?
It was okay. I mean, I didn't feel terrible about watching it. The undercard was fun enough, and I think the main card was meaningful enough that even if the fights weren't great, like Munoz had a lot of meaning, Mousasi, that fight had a lot of meaning. You know,
The Magny win had some meaning.
Hmm?
Magny has meaning.
Yeah, that fight had some meaning, and then Faber Edgar had meaning. Like all the fights felt important, whether they were incredibly fun, exciting, edge of your seat action or not. So I think that really is like, that's all I can ask, especially.
Yeah, they've certainly put on worse cards. So if this is the shape of the UFC, it wasn't a bad example. And next week, we've got a much more fun one, UFC 187. Johnson versus Cormier, plus Victor Belfort challenging Chris Weidman for the middleweight title. So we'll be back. Eugene will have Knuckle Up on Monday to talk about this card. We'll have the Care Don't Care preview, of course, on Wednesday, the Vivisection on Thursday, the Prospectus on Friday, and back Saturday night with the 6th round. So, adios, MMA. I almost forgot the plugs. Got to give us a like on YouTube. Yeah. Subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube. Read us on Twitter at DZaneSimon, at KidNate. Read us on BloodyElbow.com and Adios MMA Aficionados. Thanks a lot, Zane.
Yeah, no problem.